We were just going to sell you a seat, but we won't sell my seat. Well, we were just going to. She's worried that the front park is
Good evening, everyone.
I'll get a ticket. You should park in my car.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Penny Wright, and on behalf of all of us at the Rogers Memorial Library, I'd like to welcome you here for this Talking History evening, which we know you're going to enjoy, with the members of the Norsic, Nicolich, and Sims families. Before we begin, we would like to thank the Friends of the Rogers Memorial Library for their support of all of our programs. We invite you to become a member of the Friends this evening, if you like, in the room across the hall. And we particularly thank Betty Sabine and Jackie Serbinsky for bringing some refreshments for you to enjoy after tonight's program with us. I'd like to begin by briefly introducing tonight's guests to you. First, we have two members of the Norsic family. Three, actually. No, we have two. I'm sorry. Emil Norsic Sr. You want to raise your hand, please? Okay. And his son, Skip Norsic. Emil Norsic Sr. grew up in Sag Harbor and Southampton, then received training and worked as a welder for Grumman. He enlisted in the Marines during the war and was stationed in Cherry Point, North Carolina, where he did fine welding work on the famous Navy fighter planes. After the war, he joined his father, Pop Norsic, in the sanitation business, and in 1962, when his father retired, Mr. Norsic took over the business and has remained active for 66 years. Mr. Norsic is married to the former Ann Rayner, who is here in our audience, and they are the parents of 3 grown children and 3 grandchildren. Mr. Norsic is the founder of the Long Island chapter of Ducks Unlimited, and actually they're having their annual dinner tonight, and so they're very nice to be here while that dinner is going on. And he is known to many here in our community for playing taps on his cornet every Memorial Day at Agawam Park for the last 51 years. Please welcome Mr. Norsic. Our next guest is Mr. Norsic's son, Emil Norsic, better known as Skip, who grew up in Southampton, worked for his father during the summers, attended Delhi College and Bryant College, and returned to Southampton in 1969 to join the family business full-time. That was almost 30 years ago, and he tells me that when he first got into the business, they operated with 4 trucks and 4 employees. Today, there are 30 trucks and 20 people employed by Norsic Sanitation. Skip oversees the entire operation, which acquired Sims Sanitation in 1989 and Nicolich Sanitation this past May. Skip is a member of Ducks Unlimited, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Southampton Golf Club. Please welcome Skip Norsic. Our next 2 guests are the Sims, Fran Norsic Sims and her husband Sid Sims. There's Fran and there's Sid. Fran, like her brother Emil, grew up in Sag Harbor in Southampton, then attended St. Luke's Nursing School where she met and married Sid. They lived in New York and had 3 children, one of whom now works for Skip Norsic, before moving with her family back to Southampton in 1958 to join the family business. Since then, she has raised her family, worked for 21 years as a nurse at Southampton Hospital, and has been active as well in the Sims Sanitation business as a bookkeeper. She's also very active in the Sacred Hearts Church and is a member of the Southampton Golf Club, where she and her husband love a good game of golf. Please welcome Fran. Fran's husband, Sid, grew up and attended schools in New York City. During World War II, he served in the Air Force in the Aleutian Islands, and after the war, he met and married Fran, and worked in the liquor business in New York until 1958, when he came out to join Pop Norsic in the Norsic sanitation business. In 1962, when Pop retired, Sid acquired his own equipment and began the Sims sanitation business with a route in Shinnecock Hills. Over the years, the business grew and he remained in business for the next 26 years, retiring and selling Sims to the Norsics in 1989. Mr. Sims has been active over the years in the Elks Club and was a volunteer fireman for many years. In fact, he told me a story the other day, which I hope he'll tell tonight, about one of his duties as a fireman was to investigate a fire, which ended up being his garbage truck burning up. Like many of his relatives and in-laws, he loves golf and is a member of the Southampton Golf Club. Please welcome Sid Sims. The last branch of the family with us this evening is the Nikolic family, represented by Barbara and Peter Nikolic. Their son Bob, who was planning to join us tonight, has been delayed on a trip, so unfortunately he won't be here. Barbara Nikolic, like her two siblings here with us tonight, grew up in Sag Harbor and Southampton, attended Drake's Business School in Jamaica, and returned to Southampton. She worked for a while for the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company in Riverhead, married Peter Nikolic in 1944, spent time in Miami and New Orleans with him during the war, and returned with him to Southampton after the war to raise a family and to join the family business. Over the years, Mrs. Nikolic had already been, I did say this, yeah, I'm going to say this actually. Over the years, Mrs. Nikolic had already been active in bookkeeping for the Norsic family, and this she continued for the Norsics until 1955, when she began keeping books for her husband's business, which she did until this past May, when the Nikolics retired. Mrs. Nikolic was a Thursday night volunteer at the Southampton Hospital Coffee Shop for 24 years. Has been active at the Sacred Heart's Church and has sung in the choir since 1941. Please welcome Barbara Nikolic. Peter Nikolic, who is beside me, is originally from Clairton, Pennsylvania, where he attended schools and remained until 1939, when he volunteered for the U.S. Navy. During the next 6 years, he was stationed in Philadelphia, Tampa, and Miami, and I think New Orleans. And during the war years, he put his knowledge of Spanish and Slavic languages to work for the Lend-Lease program, in which he worked as an interpreter. He was a SCIC,
Storekeeper First Class.
Storekeeper First Class. He was in training actually for Chief Storekeeper when he finished his term of duty, 4 years, 3 months, and 19 days, he tells me, after he began. In 1945, the Nikolics returned to Southampton, and Mr. Nikolic worked for Pop for 10 years before starting out on his own in 1955. In May of this year, the Nikolics retired and sold their business to Emil Norsic and Son. Mr. Nikolic, like his wife, has been an active member of Sacred Heart's Church, where he has been a lector and a volunteer with their religious education programs. He also enjoys spending time with his 4 grandchildren, 2 of whom are 8 and 5 and live in Southampton. Please welcome Peter Nikolic. Okay. I think if we can begin by asking Mrs. Nikolic, Barbara Nikolic, to tell us just a little bit about your family's history, where you came from, how they ended up here, how your ancestors came here.
Okay.
Can you tell us that?
Yes. My dad, Emil Pop Norsic, came to the United States in 1913 with his father, Frank Norsic, a widower, and his 2 sisters and brother. That's a picture of them next to their homestead and little general store that they had in Croatia.
And that's a picture of him on the mantle, is that not?
Yes, that's my dad up there. They came to the United States on the ship Martha Washington. Their original destination was to go to Chicago, where my grandfather had been several years before and worked in one of the factories there as a mechanic. And so bringing his family over to go to Chicago, when they got to Ellis Island, they realized they were close to Sag Harbor, where there were some relatives and friends living at the time. So they came out on the Long Island Railroad, and they stayed with a family in Sag Harbor named the Kislocks. And let's see. And they loved Sag Harbor so much, and the people there were so friendly, and they loved the seashore, the bays and all. They decided to, never mind Chicago, we'll stay here. So my grandfather and my father were both offered jobs in the Joseph Faye's watch case factory, the old brick building that was Bolivar also. And he was one of the last of the employees that was kept until in 1929 when the crash came. And okay, in the spring of 1916, my mother, only 14 years old, traveled alone by ship to live with her aunt in Yonkers. And she stayed a while with her aunt there. Then she went out to see another aunt in Sag Harbor. And she liked it so much that she decided to stay in Sag Harbor. And her aunt procured a job for her in the summer mansion in Sag Harbor, where my aunt and my father's sister, Josephine, was working, and the two of them were introduced. They were married on Easter Sunday, April 8, 1917, in St. Andrew's Church on Division Street in Sag Harbor. After the wedding reception, all their friends took them to the railroad station, and Dad had bribed the conductor with a box of cigars to blow the whistle all the way from Sag Harbor to Richmond. He was so excited, which they did. In 1919, Mom and Dad bought a 12-room house on an acre of land for $1,800 on Division Street next to Pearson High School, on the grounds there, and it still stands today, that house. And all four of us children were born in that house on Division Street. Thank you.
Now, there's a fourth sibling who you all had who unfortunately has passed away.
Older
Yes.
sister, Mary Ann, yes.
Okay, and Mary Ann was the mother of
Bob Grisman.
Bob Grisney.
Bob
The
Grisman
medicine
was
shop.
pharmacist
Who
at the
many of
medicine
you know.
shop. Yeah.
Okay, so that's that connection. Okay, so we know now how your family got here, and you all can take a look at this family tree. I mean, it's a little bit confusing, but this will clarify it. Okay, so we know how your parents got here now. Emil Norsic Sr., can you tell us a little bit about how your father started working in the sanitation business?
Well, in 1932, Pop had worked for the Faye's watch case factory for, I guess quite a few years. And when the factory closed, Pop got a job here in Southampton, and he worked as a caretaker's helper at the old Duncan estate. Well, he got very good friends with the chauffeur there, and the garbage man used to neglect coming to get the garbage on time. And so Pop used to end up taking the garbage to the dumps. Well, anyway, he inquired about it and found out that the garbage man wanted to sell his business, the garbage business and the cesspool business. So, okay, they talked it over, and finally he decided he'd buy it. And I remember I was 12 years old, and Pop had come to me. And he said, son, you got $200. You made caddy it. Can we borrow it? I said, I'll never forget that. So Pop got the business. Now that was in 1932. So
And that was a lot of money back then, wasn't it?
yes. Well, anyway, he moved to Southampton, and I finished my grade school there in Sag Harbor with my friend George Bottom, who was there, my cousin, who was here tonight, and thank him, his brother. And after finishing, I moved to Southampton. That's when I went to high school here, and then later on, you had the resume of me.
Okay.
Did your father give you the money back?
Tenfold.
So from when you were a young kid, then you were always involved in
Yes.
in your family's
In
business.
fact, I was driving the truck when I was 15 years old.
Where was the dump then?
So Norsic dumps, it was at Norsic.
Okay.
In those days, we didn't have dump bodies. And in the summertime, when we get all this accumulation from Skinner's Fish Market, the Irving, Beach Club, I used to have to shovel it out with a fork. No dump in these. It was quite a job.
All right, we're going to find out more about how the business was in the old days, but let's just figure out how each person, so we now know how you got into the business, and now the next person in the business was Mr. Nikolic. So how did you come to get into the business?
Well, as you said previously, when I returned here after my enlistment was up, Barbara, I mentioned to Barbara, well, what were we going to do? Go back to my hometown. But she liked this place, which I so happy I took to it. I stayed here, and like she said, let's try to work for Pop. I went to work for Pop, and it was very agreeable. I did the best I could for him because he was a gentleman of all. And upon my 10 years associated with him, he gave me an opportunity to go on my own. And that's how I got started, with his help and goodness.
That's great, okay. Next came the Simses, and how did you all end up returning to Southampton and deciding to get into the business? Did you want to make a move? Mr. Sims, I'll ask you.
Yeah, well, I was working in New York City, and well, I got held up many times in the liquor business. 7 times. So Barbara called me and asked me how would I like to work out in Southampton. So I thought, well, try it. And in 1958 we moved out to Southampton. I started working for Pop until 1962. When he retired, then I went on my own, Sanitation.
Okay.
And then everybody had Southampton Village and Waterville taken up, so I went to Shinnecock Hills and started out there. And it grew it grew and grew.
Okay.
So did my business.
Okay. Last person I want to just get the history of your involvement is Skip. How did you come to decide?
Well,
You probably worked as a child, is that?
My dad said he started driving at 15. I started driving at 13. And that's the truth, too. But ever since we were kids, you know, it was really great to go on a truck, just to work on a truck and be involved in it. And I can't remember a time when I wasn't involved in the business. And then throughout high school, the summers, I would always work with my dad, and the same with college, the summers. And then when I graduated college, I started full-time in 1969.
Yeah. Now, over the years, how many grandchildren have come through and put themselves through school by working at this family business?
Grandchildren, nephews.
13 grandchildren, and at one time they all helped out on the truck, and
All the boys at one time or another.
We're all employed.
yes,
On the trucks.
and we've also had nephews come out. I had them sleeping in the attic and everywhere. And today, there's a pharmacist, an OBGYN, a city planner, whom you all know here.
From the family.
These are nephews.
Yeah.
Moms.
That's great. And I think that these folks told me that all of the grandchildren went through college.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
really quite an accomplishment. Let's just, I'd like to hear a little bit about how the business was in the old days when Pop and you were a kid and he was doing his business. Didn't you tell me that he always got dressed? Tell me a little bit about him. Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, Pop was one, he would go to work with a shirt and a tie. And I remember one thing, he was very particular about dumping the garbage cans. He'd always wipe them out with a newspaper and fold up a newspaper, put it on the bottom. That's what he was really noted for. And the word got around. I remember Ed Schwank's Dairy and Bill Schwank's Deli and Eugene Jennings at that time. They had a grocery store. And they got to know that Pop done a good job, and they gave him a lot of customers. And in those days, most of the businessmen met the butlers at the train because they came in with the trains those days. And they rushed up to the butler, wanted to get the job.
The butler was a pretty powerful
Oh, he was, yeah. Sometimes the owner wouldn't have anything to say, but the butler had everything to say. So that was another phase about it.
How much did they charge? I mean, as far back as you can remember.
Well, I remember they used to charge $1.50 a month to pick up once a week garbage. $1.50 a month.
Didn't you say that people would leave the money on the garbage can?
Yes, yeah. That was especially in the North Sea area. That was a Monday night after we get through about 4:30. We'd go up to, that's in the summertime, the North Sea Community Place there, and they would leave 50 cents, some 35 cents, some 50 cents on a can for us.
Were there other competitors at that time?
Yes, there was Waltman and Miller and College, Mr. College. Yeah, and Brown, Henry Brown too.
Brown too, yeah.
Now,
Gene Miller.
what percentage of the business around here, Southampton Village, do I understand correctly that you pretty much do Southampton Village? Are there other Carters in Southampton Village?
Yes.
Oh, there are. But is that where's your greatest customer base? Southampton Town?
We probably have 75 to 85% of Southampton Village, the customers in Southampton Village. But we go from the Shinnecock Canal to Wainscott as far as customers now.
Okay. And in the beginning, when you were all three in business, Nicholich and Sims and Norsic, how did you decide who got the new people in town? I mean...
Well, sometimes with certain areas that we divided, but a lot of times, especially on the summer houses, which were rented, like Nicholich would have a customer come into the house that we generally was picking up because they rented it, and we exchanged, and then when one of our customers went over to his side, he would pick it up.
I see.
We worked it out very well.
Friendly cooperation.
Always.
And did you have occasion to help each other out?
Of course, many times.
Somebody needed
Trucks
a hand?
breaking down, sure.
I want to ask the two women here how they managed to have so many careers at the same time, especially when many women were not working, you know, apart from the work they did in their families and homes. But you were the women were very active, is that so? And also Mr. Norsic's wife.
Well, I know one thing I always remember, Ann and I, when the sales tax used to come due, we used to spend Saturdays and Sundays just doing the sales tax. And now, with all this computeration, I have my niece working for us now. I'll say, Lori, you want to give me the sales tax? Beep, beep, beep. On the computer, and not only the regular taxable sales, but all the non-taxables comes out.
Right.
It's amazing.
Right.
And Ann and I, we used to labor over that sales tax.
And I was just thinking, I did the billing, and of course I answered the phone and arranged things with the customers, and you know, what prices and the days of pickups and recycling instructions and stuff. But I did the billing too, all by hand, you know, and sometimes I'd have, like in the summer, every 3 months, like 1,000 bills I would make out by hand, and my fingers were just like this.
I bet.
Yes, it was very, you know, without computers now it's a lot different. And I worked also. I worked 3 to 11 or 7 to 11 at the hospital, and Sid would take care of the kids in the evening. I didn't work full-time, I worked part-time, which was nice.
Right.
Yes, and I
Sounds like
enjoyed
you
that.
worked full-time doing something.
Yeah, well, there was always something, you know, between the business and everything. And like that you wanted to know before about raising the children out here, there was no problem. They were all very active in sports, and we carted them all around and did like everybody else. And I have another son, Carl, who is a civil engineer, and he also worked in the summers on the truck, and both kids started working really when they were like 9 and 10 years old. They'd hop on the truck and help every little bit they could.
And now Paul is the other son.
Yes,
who works full-time for
Yes, he
now
worked,
for
yes,
Norsic.
when we sold the business, Paul elected to go work for his
That's
cousin Skip, yes.
Now, Mrs. Nichols, you had studied business, is that correct?
Yes, I took a secretarial course in Southampton High School. And so when I was too young to get a job when I graduated, you know. And so Dad decided in September that maybe I should go a little further. So I went to Drake's Business School. I commuted on the Cannonball for 6 months, and I took up bookkeeping at Drake's. And so that really came in handy.
Oh, I'll say it did.
And I enjoyed my work at Metropolitan Life, but then I met Pete and we were married. Let's see, my 2 sons both worked in the business through high school and then summer vacations, and both of them are college graduates. And one of St. Francis of Loretto and one of St. Bonaventure.
That's great.
And my oldest son has 2 boys, and they're both college graduates. One's in civil engineer, and the other one is something to do with marine affairs. And he's married to one of them is married to a Southampton girl, Maureen Werner. But I started to work in a little desk I had, and then I worked on the kitchen table.
On the dining room table too, yeah. They were all spread out.
Yeah. Until things got a little behind, and I asked my friend if she would like to come, and she worked for me, and she was with me 28 years. And that's Jean Dock sitting in the corner.
I retired 4 times. One time I said to Barbara, when did I retire?
Do you remember the commutation fare from here to Jamaica?
I couldn't get a commuter ticket.
You couldn't?
No, it only went as far as Patchogue, so I had to pay regular fare.
Oh, I thought you went right into Jamaica.
I did go into Jamaica, but they didn't sell
commutation
tickets up to Patchogue, that's all.
It's really extraordinary how the employees have stayed, how they've all stayed together, how they worked for so many years, and how they're all still really friendly and close. A real testimony to you all and to your parents as well.
Excuse me.
Yes.
We when we sold our business back to Emil and Skip in May 1st, we had one man who employed. He was with us 17 years. And he just went right over to Emil with the trucks, and I guess they're happy to have him. And the other boy is a young man that was with us 4 years, and he went over to Emil. And but previous to that, I had a man who worked for us 18 years.
Wow.
So he treated us right, and we treated him right.
That's the way to run a good business, I guess. It always has been, and it probably always will be. Okay. Now for the fun part, while we're all here. Okay, so, well, actually, I want to ask a serious question, because the issue came up some years ago about organized crime. I think some of us in this room remember having in the newspaper some stories about possibly people in organized crime business trying to take over local carters. Can you say a few words about that, Mr. Norsic?
Well, talking about the scruples and everything else that some of these companies send a man, and many of the business he went to, he said, look, I'll pick your garbage up free for 3 months. And he said, what's Norsic charge? Well, I'll do it 20% less. And we had at the town board meeting one time, we had a moderator there, Mike Chewinski, I believe it was, and I got up and I told him, I said, what kind of business is that? The American way to do things like this? Go right up to somebody's where we've been in business many, many years to undercut something like that. I know one gas station, he went there the first time, 3 months free garbage. He wouldn't take it. 6 months free garbage.
Wow.
He said, Mr. Norsic's one of my good customers here, I'm not going to do that. And another fellow, he went to a radiator place, he said, we'll do it 3 months free, we'll do it 6 months free, cheaper. So the third time he came, and each time he come with another big strong arm man, and then with another man. But anyway, the last time he come, he said, you get the hell out of here. They had a hammer in his hand, don't come back. He said, Mr. Norsic set me up in business many years ago, and I would never change. But I think, Skip, we've only lost about 2 customers, and the people were very friendly and
They were very loyal to
yes.
you. And if they hadn't been, it might have happened pretty easily, I imagine, with these kinds of offers.
Some of them we had to go down on the prices. Some of them we didn't give free garbage. We did lower the price, right?
Yeah.
Skip? Yeah. And can you add anything to that?
There was one customer we had that we were donating our services to, and their salesman came in and said, well, we'll do it 20% cheaper. And the guy says, I'm not paying anything now. That was kind of funny.
Didn't you say that used to be if you got 1 or 2 new customers a year, that was a big deal? Did you say that?
I did, yeah. That's it.
And now, just imagine how many.
Sure, it's like 1 or 2 customers.
A day.
Yeah, a day.
So, how many people are doing what in Norsic now? How many people are in trucks driving around? Or how many people are cleaning cesspools? How many people are emptying garbage or doing recycling?
As far as drivers for the garbage, probably have about 10 or 12. 4 for the cesspool, 2 for the portable toilets. And for recycling, we all try to
everyone
switch.
does.
Yeah.
In the summer, it must get a lot busier for you all.
Oh, it does, just like any other business.
But do you take on more employees in the summer?
We take out some summer help, yeah, maybe 1 or 2 people, but the hours that we work are just like any other business out here. It's 5 o'clock till whenever you get done at night.
I couldn't believe, I said, do you want to meet us during lunch? He said, lunch? What's that? Lunch hour. But in the summer, particularly long days.
Sure, yeah.
Do you ever take vacation? Did you ever take vacations, Mr. Norsic?
Oh, yes. Well, no, I guess it was about 19 years before I took a vacation. But now, my wife and I go down to Florida each year. It's nice.
How is the recycling laws? Do people comply with recycling?
Yeah, they
by and large.
Pretty much so, yeah.
What if you hear, bottles clanking around in their garbage? When you pick it up, are you supposed to turn them in, or?
Well, we notify the people. We have stickers that we leave that tell them that they're not complying with the law, and everybody's
pretty good about
it. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you can tell a lot about your clients over the years, and I know you're all very discreet, but we want to hear some of this. So now you all have obviously worked for some very famous people. I mean, they live out here, and you have pretty much seen all of them, I'm sure. But let's hear some about some of. You told me a story. Who was it? Was it Mondale when he was? Peter. Was that your story? This is one he can tell because Mondale is a completely public figure.
This was the incident. Mr. Mondale used his friend's house, Mr. Allen, on Gin Lane. He was writing his acceptance speech. They got the news in New York. The mob came out there and circled his house on all 4 sides. Ocean, Gin Lane, east and west.
By the mob, you mean the press mob?
The press.
Press mob. That's where I learned the difference between NYP and NYDP, Police Department and New York Press. So this one particular lady who was so nice, but she knew I was going for the gate. Could she jump in my truck? At the time I used a small truck for close pickups. There was a canvas there. She says, could I get under it? I says, no lady, you better not. Because I knew it was being guarded. Mr. Allen told us. So when I got up to the gate, I told the man, he probably was FBI because he had his belt and gun on, and he called me by name. I didn't have to tell him who I was. He says, Mr. Nikolic, if she steps her foot across, I'll feel her with lead. and Mr. Allen said, the word is mum. Do not speak. Do not say a word. Next day in the paper, the man who came to cut Mr. Mondale's hair, he said a word outside. The press got everything out of him. The newspaper item said, the last haircut he'll ever make in this place. So the word was mum all the time.
What are some of the things you can sort of tell by, you know, picking up people's garbage?
Well, I noticed that in the old days when I picked up chicken bones and beer cans, well, people were average people. But then when I got to picking up champagne, like lobster and steak bones, I figured these people are well off. I was able to tell how they made out.
I know that you've all had stories about finding things in the garbage and having people lose things. Who had the story about the Irving Hotel? Was that Mr.
Yes, one day we got a call. Those days we still had the open trucks, didn't have packers. And that there was a large envelope that was missing at the Irving. And if we had dumped the truck yet. So we got the call and said, no, we hadn't. And he said, we lost a very valuable large envelope. So anyway, Mr. Bailey was waiting for us, and then Mr. Bailey and I went up to the dumps there, and we dumped the load out and spread it out. No, we didn't. We had to shovel out. We shoveled it out, and we were going through there, and this lady, Mrs. Staines, she was there watching this, and another guy was there, one of the waiters was watching this, and pretty soon she says, there it is over there. It was the whole week's receipts. And she went and read that envelope just like a little baby and hugged it. And well, that was one instance where we lucked out. A lot of times we look for stuff, we don't find it.
Did you have a place to sort of a lost and found when you found something that you figured was...
Yeah, sure.
That was something that someone would want to retrieve?
Oh, yeah, sure. Like at the stores, I remember, I guess it was a Singer-sewing machine there one time. He threw out 3 machines in a cardboard box.
Oh my God.
Luckily we didn't have a packers those days. We just threw it on top of the truck. And sometimes at Hilda store or one of the hardware stores, they throw out something they didn't unpack. And one of the things I remember too, at the Irving Hotel, I went to get the garbage and there was this wooden crate with a lot of seaweed on top. And I'd thrown many of them in there, so I was going to throw this a little heavy. So I looked inside and it was full of shore-shelled crabs. And I brought it into the cook. Oh boy, he hugged me. About 2 days later, he called me in there, and boy, he gave me a bottle of beer and 2 soft-shelled crabs. They were so good.
Skip, what was the story about the ring that got lost?
Well, this was, we got a call from a local beautician. She had a ring that was an eternity ring given to her by her husband when she became a citizen. And it was a row of rubies, diamonds, and sapphires. She took the ring off when she was washing somebody's hair, and it fell down the sink. She called the plumber to disconnect the sink, but they couldn't find the ring. So she called me up, and she said, is there any way you could pump the cesspool out and see if you can locate the ring? So I told her, this is 1 in a billion chances. So anyhow, we did it, and we tried sifting through on the bottom to see if we could locate anything. And I physically went down to see if we could find anything, and there was no luck. As I was coming up the ladder, the main pipe coming out, it was an old pipe, and it had, like, we call it a belly in it. So I reached in the pipe, and sure enough, there was the ring. And when I came out of there, as the condition I was, she came over and gave me a hug. So we were both pretty happy.
Well, I had a have a story that's just, it doesn't turn out good. Oh, I was picking up garbage, and one of the restaurant owners said, gee, well, he called me up and said, I think I left my receipts in there, threw in the garbage by mistake. I said, well, I'll meet you down at dump and we'll go looking for it. Well, we dug and dug and dug and never found it.
Never found it.
One other story that was affiliated with my brother-in-law, Mike, who also works with us. One of the estates, the people were moving in for the summer, and they were unpacking their cardboard boxes, and we had to bring a small truck in, a pickup truck, to carry the boxes out. And the lady said, I want everything to go there, everything. So Mike, my brother-in-law, was loading everything in a small truck, transferred it into a larger truck, and he felt it was one box, it was pretty heavy. Turned out to be the husband's coin collection. $18,000. So actually we gave it back to her. That was pretty neat.
That was very nice of you. Now, Mr. Nicholas was once called by a client who, these people were so trusted that they got called for all kinds of reasons, including a call that came to you.
Yeah. Well, this was to do with assistance of my wife. The call came, she took it home, and she kept saying, he's lying on the floor, he's halfway off the couch, he can't move, it's sort of destitute, end of life it sounded like. She kept them busy on the phone, send me down.
Instead of calling the doctor, they called Mr. Nicholas.
Send me down there, and I guess she made connections. When I got down there, I had lifted him up already, very diligently. I lifted his legs, then got his back, and I put him down like a pancake. Perfect. Now it was time to go. Nobody arrived. Pretty soon the police and this ambulance service, the volunteers, ready to go, slide him off the couch into this frame that they carry. He says, nothing doing. I need my yellow socks. so the missus and I went looking. His wife, we found it somewhere behind the couch. He put on his yellow socks, he raised his hand and said, let's go. They took him to the hospital, and poor soul, who I know, Dr. Rubra was his doctor, and they thought it was a heart attack and so forth. When it was all over, I went home. He was delivered to the hospital. The word came from the men to me. The question was asked by the doctor, who touched this man? And they, at a standstill, you know, nobody wants to be accused of doing anything wrong. And finally he said, tell him go to medical school. There was nothing wrong with the man. He lived about 15, 20 years after that.
You also had a story about jewelry.
Yeah. Okay. The other story was, I used, besides my working for myself, people asked me would I watch their house. At the time there wasn't this electronic watching your houses, you know, by radio. I watched them, I checked them according to what they said. So this particular people were leaving for the city and told me to take care of things. Snow was coming, and it did come. They were leaving the house. They called from New York and told me they had everything what they wanted that week, plus the family jewels. And explained it to me, a pear-shaped leather case. I had no idea. Would I look around? I couldn't in the snow. Pretty soon the weather came a little better and the leaves started to get up because the snow got off. And going into the house to check, I saw through the snow the copper or brass lining of when you opened this leather case. There were the jewels, and I gave it to my wife, and she could tell you, she called up.
How much later was this?
Barbara could tell
How much longer was it after? How long was it missing?
A couple of days.
Couple of days?
Yes, until Pete was able to get in there and brush the snow and all away, you know.
How did they react when you called them?
Oh, they were very happy. It was a family on South Main Street, and they were thrilled. And so I took piece by piece and labeled and wrote down every piece of jewelry that was in there and put it in my safe. And they sent their daughter out a week or two later, and so I spread them out, and I said, I want you to check each one, and we checked it off, and that was fine.
They were lucky they
They were
had
happy.
such honest carters, really.
And in between this, between what she and I did not know I was surveilled by the police. My name came to the chief of police, and he says, "Not this man." They told the family, "I got your man." Got the jewelry. That was me.
You had another story about going down Meadow Lane to collect a bill, and they were having a party?
Oh,
Right?
no.
Was this-
There was a place called the Duke Box in
Duke
Southampton.
Box, yes.
Some people will remember that. And they were having a big party this
Andrew
weekend.
Biddle.
Well, Pete was headed for a party also, and he was in his tux, his 4th degree Knights of Columbus regalia. And he said, "Well, I'll just stop by there. Maybe somebody will be there and I can get my money." It was overdue. So he went there, and I guess the butler or somebody saw him, and he asked his name, and he said it, and they announced it, Count Peter Nicholas.
I didn't want to change it. They gave me a good title.
He was so glad to get out of there.
Get their money?
I don't know if he got the, no, he got a promise, and they were always good on their promise. They, you know, the people just put it aside, they'll pay it.
They file it in Westminster.
Yeah, tell them the road.
Well, one Saturday in the summer, it was a nice day, I was called to Hampton Bays to do a cesspool job. And they were having, it was a beautiful day, there was a barbecue outside. And so I went up there, and she told me the toilets were all backed up and everything, and do something if I could. So anyway, we was outside where they had gathered, and there was a little piece of lawn there, and we had to dig the cover up. Well, anyway, in the garbage they throw out old burlaps and old rugs and stuff, which we always put down. It's very easy to put the dirt and the sod on the rug, and you can do a good job cleaning up when you backfill. Well, anyway, we got hold of the rug, we put the rug down, and I threw about 2 shovelfuls, and of course all the ladies were on the picnic tables, and the lady, "What the hell you doing?" He said, "What are you doing out there?" She said, she went over, and it was an oriental rug that I had put down. And well, anyway, to make a long story short, the job was only $40, and she gave me $50 for the rug.
There was another story, I forgot whose story it was, about a local antique dealer,
Oh,
who we won't mention.
yeah, that was me.
Was that you?
This antique, well, I went to a house and cleaned up the garage, some debris and stuff, and I piled it on a dump truck, which was pretty obvious. I stopped for a cup of coffee on the highway, and well, when I come out, this lady was parked behind me. She says, "Where are you going with that?" I'm going to the dump. So she said, "I'll give you $50 for it." It seemed it was an antique furniture that, you know, broken piece of furniture that was in the truck.
Actually, you all should have had one kid who went into the antique business. Probably would have made a lot of money that way too. Let me just fix my table.
Well, I have a tale of community here that was very nice to me. I served the Cold Spring Point area. I had around 55 houses out of 60, and they have a party every year during the summertime. So one of the men called me up and said, "Sid, would you want to stop by the party and just go to it?" So I told him, I said, "Gee, we have another engagement to go to, but I'll think about it." Anyhow, on the way to this other engagement, we said, "Let's go over to Cold Spring." We went over there. Little did we know that they were honoring myself there first. And they gave me a plaque
Isn't that
for 20 years.
It's lucky he went.
20 years of great service to people here.
Was that when you retired?
No.
Or
That
was
was
just-
while I was
just-
still
It
working.
was just while you were still.
Well, I was
isn't
still
that nice?
working. 20 years I served the
That's
Cold
great.
Spring. Yeah, that was great.
Why don't we show a couple of things that you all have found in the garbage, right? That little high chair over there.
Oh, I love that chair.
I love it. So show it to us.
Isn't this, I love it.
Oh, you lied. That was Tony's. I think I got something.
This happened to be a cleanup job, and the lady said,
Yours probably.
I need all the room in the garage I could have. Everything goes. I saw this, but it was painted. Barbara took it to a man who does this cleaning. When he removed it, that's what it was.
Beautiful.
Now, she's in her high chair position now. She has a little range back here. She goes next. Now she'll go again. Now watch more. She's locked. And one more. Now she's a rock.
How old was that?
I don't know what the 1700s, 1800s. You want me to show someone what I have here? Where did I put Lincoln? Oh,
Okay, now we have to show this picture. This is.
I love that.
I told him, don't sell this for $50 because I'm sure it's worth a lot more than that. It's a painting of Abraham Lincoln.
Wow.
Oh, needs cleaning, but it's beautiful.
show the back. Don't do it.
It's old,
Frame is made.
and it's signed, and
John Lang is the artist, painter.
Did you ever bring it in to those places?
No, I don't wish to do that.
No. We'd like to know what it's worth. It's beautiful.
it's a beautiful painting.
And then, where Penny's standing up in the corner, there's all pictures of Lincoln's faces, and I have some more laying on the shelf. Nobody's ever matched that, so I think I have an original that nobody has ever copied or seen. Now,
These are some ties.
the two ties that she's going to show you. I had a retired man who worked for Standard Oil. When he retired, he wanted a little hobby, so he went into silk ties. So he gave me three. I couldn't get the third one. The one I don't have is when Nixon went to China, and one is for 4th of July. And what's the other one now?
The man on the moon.
When the man went to the moon. This man honored those. So when the man went to the moon, that's the time that three ties were made.
So all kinds of interesting clients here. Now, this is yours, is it?
Yeah, this is it's a stock certificate from the Richfield Oil Company, California, and it's stamped the date of the crash of '29.
Oh,
which
wow.
is kind of interesting.
That was a find.
I guess he did. He did.
And then there's a sampler up here that I had no idea. My mom had it. I don't know how many years, but it was done in 1797.
Wow. Sample is beautiful.
Now, what is this?
Oh, that's my grandfather's original ledger book.
Oh my
And the first
God.
entry was October 28, 1932.
Wow.
Wow, that really they saved that.
Look at that.
Got a cesspool job for $9.
Wow. Do I have some little girl?
See, what else? And that's a photograph of Pop and Nettie, right up there.
Oh.
And then the second, the photograph, is that your first truck, Mr. Sims?
Yes,
Tell them about the
over there.
burning up.
Oh, yeah, was my first truck. But I'm
Yeah,
in
the christening.
yeah, we had a christening of it when I first got it. And, well, everybody brought gifts, and Phil Frankenback, he brought me a truckload. He dumped a truckload of garbage. One of the gifts.
What a guy.
But anyhow, I'm in the fire department, and I was in the fire department. And one Saturday morning, I heard this alarm go off, and it was up on Little Neck Road and Montauk Highway. And as I'm riding up there, I said, oh, there's smoke in it. Boy, I said, that's on fire. When I get there, my truck was turned over, burning. Here it is, a picture of burning up. Somebody stole the truck from Ernie Wilson's. And I was having brake trouble, so the guy must have hit the brake or something and turned it over.
Now, what do you have
And
over
then I
there?
have left here, if anybody wants to glance at it, the first truck became modern that I was able to buy. And I always like to save books or something. I like to read. So one day, I met a gentleman who knew when President Tito came to visit the United States. Many, many dignitaries after the war wanted to come here and see our livelihood, how we work, how we get along and all that. That gentleman gave me a gold watch, and back it's engraved with the ex-president of Yugoslavia, J.B. Tito. J is for Joseph and B is for Brož and Tito. So I got the watch that this gentleman was given because he was on the security when Tito went through the United States. He had to be watched. And one of those, whatever they call them, escorts or so forth, lived in Southampton. He took a liking the way I served him, and he said, "This belongs to you." And then another place has nothing to do with this one. I have a man who was a writer and everything. He left me many books a cart away. This one happened to be when Tito made a special visit to speak to the people of France, because the title says Tito Parle, Tito speaks. I'm not very good in French. That's how I got this.
By the way, have any of you gone back to your parents?
Oh, yes. There's a picture here of their original birthplace and general store, and that well is, parts of it are still crumbly. I saw in 1970. Parts of that well in the corner there.
Is the house still standing?
Part of it. Part of it is.
Do you still have relatives over there?
Oh yes, we have. I have cousins, and let's see, second cousins over there. And when we went in 1970 for a visit, and we went to the cemetery, and there was my name, Barbara Norsic, on a stone. That was my grandmother. It was strange to see my name on it.
Did your parents go back?
Oh yes.
They went back?
Yes, they went back. They took what you call the grand tour. Mr. Osborne from Osborne Travel at the time, he arranged this for them, and they eventually ended up in Zagreb, in Yugoslavia. And
what language did they speak at home when you all were growing up?
English. They never talked to her unless they wanted to say something they didn't want us to hear.
But did you learn the language?
No, we never learned Croatian language. But my sister did know a few words, able to get along, because she lived among people out in Pennsylvania who spoke and wrote the language. Pete speaks Croatian fluently and can write it.
The reason for that is my pop came here a very young man, and Mom followed him shortly. So he didn't hear the English language. So it was about the 3rd grade when I began to hear it's a new language, and I thought, I'm in a new country.
Right.
So when the teacher gave us lessons, this is a bird, that's his wing, that's his foot, she pointed to the bird's mouth and she asked everybody, explain that, what is that? Where she's pointing, and nobody said a word. And it came to my mind again in Croatian.
Right.
In Croatian. The beak of the bird is called kune. If you think of kune in the old Nebuchadnezzar day, cuneiform writing. So I said to the teacher, I got a gold star. I never knew why I got it. I just said the bird's mouth is kune. She said, brilliant. The last book I have, and this is my last item, I have a book which was written by somebody, it's called The Long Island Village Sea Spray. And this was written by a lady named Martha Vicker. And it was published in 1867. But little did I know, last couple of weeks, I picked up this paper called The Independent. They were honoring East Hampton, and in there is the story about a famous doctor and his daughter. That's the daughter that wrote the book. I found out this is 1998. Thank you very much.
Do we have anybody in the audience who, oh wait, aren't there some guns over there?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Maybe they could look afterwards.
Well, you can browse around and look. Is there anyone in the audience who has a question for our guests here? Yes.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say that when I moved here in 1972, Sid Sims was our garbologist. He came to North Sea Beach Colony, and I think he serviced almost everybody there. And yeah, I think he came on Saturdays because I must have been working then. And it was like having, you know, a friend come to visit. And he was wonderful, and he never minded how much mess my brother's kids made, so putting out the garbage. And it was great all the years that you worked there.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
And a question here.
And a question.
Or actually,
I guess many of the folks here have seen what I've seen over the years, but I was most impressed several years ago at a golf, the flights. And of course, Sid was competing with Irv Weinstein, and his beautiful wife and friends had shirts made up and signs on the truck. Put the lid on Sid. Remember that? Put the lid on Sid.
Carol has...
Mrs. Spooner.
I just remember very clearly the first day I moved into my house in Southampton, and Peter Nikolic came up to me and he said, "Now, is there anything that I can..." I couldn't believe this. This man came up, he said, "Now, is there anything I can do to help you?" And he came back and wanted to move boxes. He was just so nice. It was unbelievable coming from the city's area that we came from. This was so different.
Well, I think it's just wonderful that in this day and age we have, you know, an example of people who have been honest and good and kind and beloved by the entire community and close-knit as a family. I think you've really done a wonderful service for yourselves and for our community. We have one other, I see we have another comment.
I will never forget, I was involved with the village at that time, and I was following a sanitation truck, and I see it jam on its brakes, and who gets out but Pete Nikolic picking up some garbage that somebody had thrown on the street. And that to me was fantastic. That is public service at its best.
Mary Welker?
I'd just like to make two brief comments. 30 years ago, Sid was the ambassador of welcome in Shinnecock Hills. And one of the driving forces behind the college's having a gymnasium. He was so interested in having a gym for the college. And a few years ago, I learned when I was on the board of the library that for over 50 years, the Norsic family, through several generations, has provided weekly cartage for the library, and no bill ever comes.
Wow.
I must say one thing, of all the goodness that you people think of the family, I owe my allegiance to Papa Norsic. He taught me honesty, faithfulness, and respect, and you'll go a long way.
Well, I really want to thank you all for, actually I have a little tiny story that's my own story, which was that I had a hard time a few years ago, and Norsic was my the carter, and I was able to bake bread for them in lieu of a bill for several years, and I will never forget that, and I've always appreciated it. Thank you all for for coming, and don't go yet. Come across the hall and have something to eat.
Thank you.
Thank you.